Have you ever noticed that Menifee keeps showing up every time you search homes in Southern California? There's probably a reason for that. Over the last several years, I've helped quite a few families relocate to Menifee. Some came from Seattle, some came from Colorado, others came from Los Angeles, and almost every one of them said something similar. We honestly didn't think we'd be able to afford California. Then they discovered Menifee. But here's the thing. Menifee isn't just a less expensive version of Temecula or Murrieta. It's a completely different lifestyle. For some people, it's exactly what they've been searching for. For others, it probably isn't the right fit. So before you decide whether Menifee should be at the top of your list, I want to give you an honest look at what it's really like to live here. The good, the not so good, and everything in between. Welcome back to Love to Live in the Temecula Valley. I'm Catherine Materiali. If you're thinking about relocating to Southwest Riverside County, you've probably come across Menifee while looking online. Maybe you've noticed the newer homes, the larger lots, or the prices that seem noticeably lower than some of the surrounding cities. And naturally, that raises the question, what's the catch? That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. I've been helping people relocate to this area since 2009, and one thing I've learned is that the best city depends entirely on the life you're trying to build. For some people, that's Temecula. For others, it's Murrieta. And for quite a few of my clients, it's been Menifee. In this video, I'll walk you through what everyday life is really like here. We'll talk about the neighborhoods, housing, schools, shopping, commuting, recreation, the pros, the cons, and who I genuinely think Menifee is and isn't the right fit for. My goal isn't to convince you to move here. It's to help you figure out whether this is the place where you'll feel most at home. So if you're ready, let's jump in. One of the things I think surprises people the most about Menifee is just how central it is. If you're not familiar with Southwest Riverside County, Menifee sits right along the 215 freeway between Murrieta and Paris. It's about 20 to 25 minutes from Temecula wine country, a little over an hour from Oceanside, and depending on traffic, around an hour and a half to Orange County or San Diego. And it's also only about 45 minutes to Idlewild if you enjoy getting up into the mountains. So while Menifee itself has plenty to offer, one of its biggest advantages is how easy it is to enjoy everything around it. And that's something I've seen over and over again with the families I've helped relocate here. I had one couple, Kurt and Karen, who found me on YouTube while they were researching 55+ communities. They had spent decades vacationing along the Orange County coast every summer. And when it came time to retire, they wanted to stay close enough that beach days could still be a regular part of their lives. At first, we explored a different community closer to Orange County in South Corona, but they ultimately fell in love with a beautiful Del Webb community here in Menifee. It gave them the affordability they were looking for, incredible resort-style amenities, and because they love to travel, the peace of mind of living in a gated community where they could lock the door and head off on their next adventure. One of the things Kurt was most excited about was the lap pool, because he's an avid swimmer. But my favorite part of their story happened after they moved. They loved it so much that 2 of Kurt's siblings decided to move into the same community. At the time I'm filming this, their homes are still being built, and before long, all 3 siblings will be living around the corner from each other. I just love stories like that. Another thing that's contributing to Menifee's growth is remote work. Years ago, people often had to choose where they lived based almost entirely on where they worked. Today, for a lot of families, that's no longer the case. I've helped several clients relocate here from places like Seattle because they realized they could keep their careers, enjoy California sunshine, and own a beautiful home that would have been far out of reach in many coastal communities. That doesn't mean Menifee is perfect. Like every city, there are trade-offs, and we're going to talk honestly about those throughout this video. But If you're looking for a place where you can stretch your housing budget while still enjoying everything Southern California has to offer, it's easy to understand why Menifee continues to be one of the fastest growing cities in the region. The city's appeal has been driven by its affordability, newer housing, and rapid population growth since incorporating in 2008. Now let's talk about what everyday life actually feels like, because that's where I think you'll really begin to understand why so many people choose to call Menifee home. One of the things I always tell people is that you can't judge a city by looking at a map. You have to picture what a normal Tuesday feels like. Where do you grab coffee in the morning? Where do your kids play after school? Where do you walk the dog? Where do you meet friends for dinner? Those are the things that determine whether a place actually feels like home. And I think that's where Menifee surprises a lot of people. The pace of life here is noticeably slower than what you'll find in Los Angeles or Orange County. You're not surrounded by high-rise buildings or constantly fighting heavy city traffic just to run errands. Instead, you'll find master-planned neighborhoods, community parks, walking trails, sports fields, and families out enjoying the sunshine. One thing I've noticed from helping so many people relocate here is that people tend to spend more time outside. Whether it's taking the kids to the park, playing pickleball, going for an evening walk, or meeting neighbors at one of the community events, there's a real emphasis on enjoying the weather and being part of the neighborhood. That reminds me of one of my favorite families I've had the privilege of helping. Matt and Michelle found me on YouTube while they were planning their move from Seattle. Matt works remotely and Michelle is a nurse, so they knew she'd eventually be looking for a new job once they got settled. They also have 2 young kids, so finding the right neighborhood was just as important as finding the right house. We ended up finding them a beautiful new construction home in Menifee in a neighborhood that's close to a highly sought-after elementary school. Their home sits at the end of a cul-de-sac, and literally just steps away is a community playground where their kids play all the time. There's also pickleball nearby, which has become another fun part of the neighborhood. But what I love most is watching how they've embraced everything they were hoping this move would bring. They were counting down the days until they could buy their Disneyland passes. They've been spending time at the beach, enjoying the California sunshine, making friends in the neighborhood, and building a community for their family. And honestly, that's a theme I see over and over again. People aren't moving to Menifee because they think it's the most exciting city in Southern California. They're moving here because it gives them the opportunity to build the kind of everyday life they've been dreaming about. Now, that's not to say Menifee has everything. If you're looking for upscale shopping districts, a vibrant downtown, or a huge nightlife scene, you'll probably find yourself heading to nearby cities from time to time. But if your priorities are newer neighborhoods, parks, community, and having room to breathe, there's a lot to love about living here. And speaking of neighborhoods, that's where I want to go next, because not every part of Menifee feels the same. Depending on where you buy, your day-to-day experience can look very different. So let's take a closer look at some of the area's most popular communities. One of the biggest things to understand about Menifee is that it isn't just one big neighborhood. Depending on where you live, your experience can feel pretty different. Some communities are geared toward active adults. Some are perfect for growing families. Some offer larger lots and more space. Others focus on newer homes with incredible amenities and parks. That's one of the reasons I always encourage my relocation clients to spend at least a full day exploring Menifee before making a decision. It's not enough to just tour a model home. I want you to drive the neighborhoods, stop by the parks, grab lunch nearby, and picture what your everyday routine would actually look like. One of the things Menifee has become especially well known for is its newer master-planned communities. Many of these neighborhoods were thoughtfully designed with families in mind. So it's common to find parks, walking trails, playgrounds, sports courts, and community gathering spaces woven right into the neighborhood. If you're looking for that everything feels new experience, Menifee has a lot to offer. One family that immediately comes to mind is Jason and Reese. They found me on YouTube while they were living in Los Angeles. They have a young son, and they were feeling what so many Southern California families feel. Housing prices where they lived made it incredibly difficult to achieve the lifestyle they wanted. The great thing was that Jason owns his own business and works from home. So they had flexibility. We ended up finding them a brand new Pulte home here in Menifee. Since moving, their son has made friends throughout the neighborhood. They've connected with other families, and they've become regulars at my client appreciation events. Watching them build a real sense of community here has been one of the most rewarding parts of helping them relocate. That's something I hear quite a bit from families who move here. They aren't just buying a newer home. They're buying into neighborhoods where kids are outside riding bikes, neighbors know each other, parks are full on the weekends, and there's a real sense of community that's sometimes harder to find in more established cities. Now, if you're in a different season of life, Menifee has options for you too. The city has become one of Southern California's most popular destinations for active adult living, with several 55-plus communities that offer everything from resort-style clubhouses and fitness centers to pickleball courts, social clubs, and organized activities. And then there are neighborhoods that offer larger lots if having more outdoor space is a priority, along with established communities that have mature landscaping and a different feel than some of the newer developments. The nice thing is there really isn't one best neighborhood. The best neighborhood depends entirely on your stage of life, your budget, and how you picture spending your time once you get here. That's why I spend so much time asking my clients questions before we ever look at homes. Once I understand the lifestyle they're hoping to create, it becomes so much easier to narrow down which neighborhoods actually fit them. Now let's talk about one of the biggest reasons people start looking at Menifee in the first place: what your money can actually buy here. Let's be honest. One of the biggest reasons people start looking at Menifee is because they realize their money simply goes farther here. If you've been shopping in places like Orange County, LA, or even parts of San Diego, it can be pretty shocking to see what your budget can buy once you start looking in Menifee. Maybe it's an extra bedroom, a 3-car garage, a bigger backyard, a brand new home instead of one that needs a complete remodel. Or maybe it's simply being able to buy a home at all. But here's something I tell my clients all the time. I don't think Menifee is about buying a cheaper house. I think it's about buying more possibilities. I've seen that play out over and over again. One couple that comes to mind is June and RG. They found me on YouTube while they were living in Seattle. RG works remotely for a company based in Los Angeles, so they had flexibility in where they could live. Their dream was to enjoy California sunshine, but they honestly didn't think California was even going to fit their budget. Then they started looking at Menifee. They were amazed that they could afford a beautiful brand new home here while still enjoying everything they had hoped California would offer. Today, they're soaking up the sunshine, and every time I see pictures of their home, it looks like something straight out of a magazine. She has done an incredible job making it their own. That's the kind of story I love. Not because someone bought a house, but because they realized a dream they thought wasn't possible. Now, one thing you'll notice as you're shopping in Menifee is that there is a lot of new construction. If you've watched my channel for a while, you know I love educating buyers on both new construction and resale because there isn't one right answer for everyone. The nice thing about Menifee is you often have both options. There are beautiful established neighborhoods if you prefer mature landscaping and a home with a little more history. And then there are also numerous new home communities where you can choose your floor plan, personalize finishes, enjoy modern, energy-efficient construction, and take advantage of neighborhood amenities like parks, trails, pools, or clubhouses, depending on the community. That variety gives buyers a lot of flexibility. One thing I always encourage people to remember, though, is that the purchase price is only one part of the equation. As you're comparing homes, you'll also want to look at property taxes, HOA dues, and if there are any special assessments, solar costs, insurance, and your overall monthly payment, not just the list price. Sometimes the least expensive home isn't actually the least expensive to own. And sometimes spending just a little bit more upfront gives you a home that fits your lifestyle so much better over the long run. That's why I always encourage my clients to look at the whole picture before making a decision. At the end of the day, I don't want you to simply find the least expensive home. I want you to find the home that gives you the best quality of life for your budget. And speaking of quality of life, let's talk about one of the biggest questions I get from relocating families. What about the schools? If you're moving with kids, chances are this is one of the biggest questions on your mind, and I completely understand. In fact, it's one of the very first conversations I have with families who are relocating. Now, one thing you'll probably notice is that I'm not going to sit here and tell you which schools are the best. The truth is, every family defines a great school a little differently. For one family, academics might be the top priority. For another, it could be sports, music, special education services, or simply finding a school where their child feels supported and can thrive. That's why I always encourage my clients to do their own research using the California School Dashboard, school district websites, and by visiting schools if possible. There's no substitute for seeing a campus and getting a feel for it yourself. One thing that's also really helpful to understand if you're relocating here is that Menifee doesn't have one single school district that takes students all the way from kindergarten through high school. Depending on where you buy, your elementary and middle schools may be part of either Menifee Union School District or the Romaland School District. Then, for high school, students in Menifee attend schools within the Paris Unified School District. I know that can sound a little confusing if you're moving here from another city or another state, but it's actually something I help my clients navigate all the time. As we're narrowing down neighborhoods, we'll look at which schools serve each home you're considering, talk through what's most important to your family, and make sure we're focusing on areas that fit your priorities. Because the reality is, two homes that are only a few miles apart could be assigned to completely different elementary schools, even though they eventually feed into the same high school district. That's one of the reasons I always recommend choosing the neighborhood first and then confirming the school assignments for any home you're seriously considering. One family that comes to mind is Matt and Michelle. When we started looking at homes together, one of their biggest priorities wasn't just finding the right floor plan or the newest community. They wanted to make sure they were in a neighborhood that was close to a highly sought after elementary school and where their two kids could grow up surrounded by other families. As we narrowed down their search, we looked closely at the school boundaries for each neighborhood we were considering, so they understood exactly which schools served each home. That's something I do with every family because those boundaries can change from one neighborhood to the next. And it's an important part of making sure you're buying not just the right house, but the right location for your family. At the end of the day, I always encourage people to think beyond test scores alone. Research the schools. Visit the campuses if you can. Explore the neighborhoods and ask yourself, can I picture my family living here? Because having kids who can ride their bikes around the neighborhood, walk to the park, make friends nearby, and enjoy the community around them is a huge part of what makes a place feel like home. If you decide to make the move, I'll help you navigate those district boundaries, school assignments, and neighborhood options so you can feel confident you're making the right decision for your family. Now, while schools are a big piece of everyday life, they're certainly not the whole picture. So next, let's talk about what there actually is to do in Menifee, from shopping and restaurants to parks, recreation, and the places you'll probably find yourself visiting every week. One question I get all the time is there actually enough to do in Menifee? And I think the answer depends on what you're looking for. If you're expecting a walkable downtown filled with boutique shopping, nightlife, and dozens of restaurants like you'll find in Old Town Temecula, Menifee isn't that. But if you're looking for a city where you can comfortably handle your everyday life without constantly driving all over Southern California, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Over the last several years, Menifee has grown tremendously. And with that growth has come a lot more shopping, restaurants, healthcare, and everyday conveniences. You'll find grocery stores like Stater Brothers, Albertsons, Aldi, and Sprouts, along with Target, Lowe's, and just about every store most people visit on a regular basis. There are also plenty of coffee shops, fitness centers, medical offices, and newer retail centers continuing to open as the city grows. Healthcare is another area that's continued to expand, with Loma Linda University Medical Center in Murrieta just to the south and Kaiser Permanente serving the Menifee community, along with numerous urgent care centers and medical specialists throughout the area. Now, when it comes to restaurants, I always tell people that Menifee has a really good mix of everyday favorites. You'll find everything from local breakfast spots and family-owned restaurants to national chains and casual dining options. And because Temecula and Murrieta are just a short drive away, it's easy to enjoy a date night in Old Town, spend an afternoon wine tasting, or try one of the area's many great restaurants whenever you're in the mood. Where I think Menifee really shines, though, is outdoor recreation. There are parks throughout the city, miles of walking trails, sports fields, pickleball courts, community events, and plenty of opportunities to simply get outside and enjoy the sunshine. And because you're living in Southern California, weekend adventures become part of everyday life. One weekend, you might be spending the day at the beach. The next, you're walking through Old Town Temecula. Maybe you're wine tasting with friends, heading up to Idlewild for the day, or taking the kids to Disneyland. One thing I've noticed about the families I've helped move here is that they really embrace that lifestyle. They enjoy having a quieter place to come home to while still being close enough to take advantage of everything Southern California has to offer. I think that's one of Menifee's biggest strengths. It's not trying to be the center of everything. It's a place where you can build your everyday life while still having incredible destinations within reach whenever you want them. Of course, every city has trade-offs, so before you decide whether Menifee is the right fit, let's talk about them honestly. I'll share what I think are some of the biggest advantages of living here, along with a few things I always make sure my relocation clients understand before they make the move. By now, you've probably realized that I genuinely like Menifee. I've helped a lot of families make the move here, and for many of them, it's been exactly the right decision. But one thing I always tell my clients is this: every city has trade-offs. If someone tells you a place is perfect, they're probably trying to sell you something. My job is to help you understand both the advantages and the things you should think carefully about before making a move. Let's start with what I think are some of Menifee's biggest strengths. The first is affordability. Not because homes are cheap, Southern California isn't inexpensive, but because your money generally stretches farther here than it does in many neighboring communities. For a lot of families, that means they can afford the extra bedroom, the larger backyard, the 3-car garage, or even a brand new home that might not have been possible somewhere else. The second is newer neighborhoods. If you love modern floor plans, open concept living, energy efficient construction, community parks, and neighborhoods that continue to grow, Menifee has a lot to offer. The third is the sense of community. Whether it's families gathering at neighborhood parks, active adults enjoying their community amenities, or neighbors getting together for local events, I've watched so many of my clients build friendships and truly feel at home here. And finally, I think one of Menifee's biggest strengths is its location. You have the opportunity to enjoy Southern California while still having a quieter place to come home to at the end of the day. Now let's talk about the trade-offs. One of the biggest adjustments for some people is that Menifee is still growing. That's exciting because new shopping centers, restaurants, medical offices, and services continue to open. But it also means there are areas where you'll notice ongoing construction, and there may be amenities you're waiting for that simply haven't arrived yet. Another thing to think about is commuting. If your job requires you to drive into Orange County, LA, or San Diego every day, you need to be realistic about what that commute is going to look like. For some people, especially those who work remotely or only commute occasionally, it's a non-issue. For others, it could become one of the biggest factors in deciding whether Menifee is the right fit. And finally, if your ideal weekend involves walking to coffee shops, boutique shopping, nightlife, or a lively downtown, Menifee probably isn't going to check all of those boxes. It's a different lifestyle. It's more suburban, more neighborhood focused, more about community than entertainment. Personally, I don't think any of those things are deal breakers. They're simply part of understanding what kind of city Menifee is. Because once you understand what it offers and what it doesn't, you can make a much better decision about whether it fits the life you're trying to build. Which brings me to the question I always encourage people to ask themselves. Who is Menifee really the right fit for? So, after everything we've talked about, who do I honestly think Menifee is the right fit for? First, I think it's an incredible option for people who want to maximize what their housing budget can buy. If you're looking at other parts of Southern California and feeling discouraged by how far or maybe how little your money goes, Menifee is absolutely worth exploring. Second, I think it's a fantastic fit for remote workers. I've helped several families relocate here because they weren't tied to an office every day. That flexibility gave them the opportunity to buy a home that better fit their lifestyle while still enjoying everything Southern California has to offer. I also think Menifee is a wonderful choice for growing families. If your vision includes neighborhood parks, newer communities, kids playing outside, making friends down the street, and having room to grow, there are some fantastic neighborhoods here that really support that kind of lifestyle. And if you're looking ahead to retirement, Menifee has become one of Southern California's premier destinations for active adults. I've watched clients build incredible lives here, spending more time traveling, staying active, making new friends, and enjoying the next chapter of life. But I also think it's important to be honest about who Menifee might not be the best fit for. If your dream is to walk out your front door to a vibrant downtown, spend every weekend exploring boutique shops, enjoy a busy nightlife, or live in the middle of constant activity, you may find yourself happier in a different community. And that's okay, because this isn't about finding the best city. It's about finding your city. I've always believed that buying a home starts with choosing the right lifestyle. The house comes second. I've seen that play out with so many of the families I've had the privilege of helping. For Kurt and Karen, it meant creating retirement they had always imagined while staying close enough to enjoy the beaches they had loved for years. For June and Archie, it meant realizing that living in sunny Southern California was actually possible. For Jason and Reese, it meant giving their son more space, a neighborhood filled with other families, and a better quality of life. And for Matt and Michelle, it meant finding a community where they could put down roots, raise their kids, and enjoy everything they had hoped California would be. None of them moved here for exactly the same reason, but every one of them found a lifestyle that fit what mattered most to them. That's why I always encourage people not to ask, what's the best city? Instead, ask, which city best supports the life I'm trying to build? If the answer might be Menifee, I'd love to help you figure that out. If you're planning a move to Menifee, Temecula, Murrieta, or anywhere here in the Southwest Riverside County, I'd love the opportunity to help. Whether you're moving from another part of California or from across the country, this is what I've been helping families do since 2009, and I'd be honored to help you too. You'll find all of my contact information in the description below, so don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. And if you enjoyed this guide, make sure to subscribe because I have in-depth videos on Temecula, Murrieta, Menifee, Winchester, neighborhood tours, new construction walkthroughs, and everything you need to know before making your move. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.